Welcome to the Funnel Reboot Podcast with your host, Glenn Schmeltzley. Let's get into today's show.
Hey, Glenn here. Welcome to Funnel Reboot, the show for analytically minded marketers. We have a talk today with an author whose insights will help us deal with the massive changes happening all around. So let's get straight into today's show. Increasingly, many marketing teams have been forced to transform their own teams, or the business as a whole that they're in has had to start transforming itself. But no matter how technically sophisticated they are, no matter how many consultants they have, or how many project management meetings they hold, most companies struggle through these transformations. At best, when they succeed, they leave heartache and sore feelings everywhere. And most of them revert to the status quo that they tried so hard to shake. And those leading the initiatives, sadly, end up demoralized, marginalized, or maybe downsized. People who say that they can make transformation successful are treated with skepticism. When that someone that says that has skills that are so multifaceted and has pulled off this feat in multiple industries, you ought to lean in and hear them out. Susan Odle is someone whose life journey and heritage spans 3 continents. She was born to Guyanese parents who first moved her to London, England, and then to Toronto, Canada. And she went to high school there, and it happened to be the same high school where I went. She then moved on to Ottawa to study music at university. The musician in her has been strong from then until now. She even put out a solo project that she released in 2017. Our paths crossed again years later when I moved to Ottawa. And in the interim, Susan had been holding pivotal roles in high-tech firms, leading channel and direct sales, professional services, and ops. This helped several of those firms to successful exits. She was honored in 2020 as one of the top 50 women in SaaS by the Software Report. She's also owned several businesses of her own as well. And currently, she specializes in operationalizing change through her consultancy CS 8020. She's also taken her understanding of navigating change successfully and literally wrote the book on it. Successful Change was released in 2023. So let's go now and talk to Susan Odle. I'm really glad to welcome Susan. How are you doing, Susan?
I'm doing great, Glenn. Thanks for having me on your podcast. Hope you're doing well today.
I am, and I'm excited to get into this book. You're a published author. It's just incredible to see. What is the name of the book, Susan?
The name is Successful Change. 2 words that mean an awful lot.
Yeah. So let's go into the types of scenarios where people find themselves needing change. Just the background for the book, for people who don't know, you have spent pretty much your lifetime in technology. So I think it's fair to say that change and technology are kind of synonymous.
Absolutely. I mean, I think you can't pick a more change-oriented industry. I mean, we look at the rise of AI, the prolific rise of AI just in the last literally 8 months in terms of consumer-based generative AI. And it's a perfect example. But I've been through I'll age myself a bit. Back when Windows NT transformed into Windows 2000 and everything became way more UI based in terms of being able to organize your network environments. And I'll age myself before that. Selling services back when we had Y2K. The conversion of the clock turning over to the year 2000. So I've seen.
I was there.
Yeah, we've seen a lot, right? So, and it's one of the reasons I absolutely love working in this industry. It's one of my sayings is or phrases that I live by when I'm happy doing the work I'm doing is that it's not boring. I love the complexity and the challenge and the opportunity that technology provides.
Right, and it's there, but I'm gonna bring in a word that you use as well that I think people sometimes go too far when they're looking at their own field. I mean, pretty much every company is now a technology company, right? It's not just the technology industry. What technology is doing to every vertical is now like everybody's getting a taste of what this constant change means. And some people equate it to chaos.
Mm-hmm.
And you deal with this head on. I mean, one of the things I appreciated in the book was you kind of said that chaos is what's going to happen to you unless you have a plan. Tell us what you mean by that.
Well, chaos is going to happen regardless, whether you have a plan or not. So change and chaos are synonymous. The
Okay.
point is, are you ready, equipped through experience and just sort of even a natural DNA for handling chaos, which, I possess a crazy ability to kind of jump into the deep end of craziness. Whether, and chaos can be a blank piece of paper and you've got to figure out what to put on it that's going to work. Or
Yeah.
it could be a jumbled mess on paper that you have to make some sort of, uh, path forward out of. But chaos and change are synonymous. And if you're not equipped to manage chaos, that's when things really fall apart because people, if they feel like they're in a chaotic situation and it isn't being managed, there's nobody that really does have the ability to create some sort of sense out of chaos, then you're effectively quite doomed to failure when it comes to change. So, I think that people need to take the blinders off when it comes down to important change and just assume that there will be some chaos and be really proactive about looking out for the indicators of the chaos and get in front of it and manage it. And communication's a big part of that. So I won't get too far ahead, but
Okay. Yeah, you can only minimize it. You can't get rid of it.
you can't get rid of it. Like, let's not be naive.
Right.
Change is disruptive. So it's about the degree of chaos you're going to have to manage. And if you're proactive enough and you have enough grit and you have enough resiliency and you work hard enough, you can minimize the chaos and minimize the impact of it. If you don't do those things, then that chaos is going to grow and it can become unwieldy and really destroy, what your ambitions are.
Right. And part of what people, I think, fall into, and this is true, I think the larger the company, the truer it is, you fall into this kind of sense of just things being rather static. Things don't change much from day to day. You might even call it status quo-itis, that kind
Yeah.
of things get ossified, right? Well, we've always done it this way. And in, an environment, an external environment that's changing, we can't have that. That's going to cripple leadership. It's going to cause, even down at lower operational levels, increasing tension, and it's going to hurt the bottom line. You instead offer the idea that we need to think of this like water and waves, and that we might need to get up on a board and kind of surf it.
Yeah, it's so funny. I don't know why I came up with that analogy, but I was writing that part of the book and it just seemed like a perfect analogy. So I don't surf, my daughter does. I boogie board because I'm incapable of not hitting the water hard and it hurts if you've ever done it.
Right.
It's a lot of fun, but it hurts. But yeah, the analogy is that uh unless you are in some sort of static annuity type business, which probably doesn't need a lot of salespeople, I guess if it's an order taking business, then you're going to have, sort of like you said, stagnation
Yeah.
where there isn't a lot of change because maybe the business doesn't really care about growth. They just care about maintaining the status quo. So if you're not in that sort of, annuity type of business model, then growth is required and change is going to come. So my analogy in the book is really around the waves, and you have three options. You can ride the wave, figure out how to ride the wave until you get down to calm water and jump off or stand up and go back out and catch the next one, which might be a little bit different, which will be because waves are not uniform, will be a little different than the first one. Or you can crest it and sit back on the flat water and see what everybody else is doing, or you can just stand on shore and let it hit you and see if you survive
Yeah.
getting pounded by that wave of change. So those are the three options, and my position is very strongly that you have to choose the first one, which is to crest it, not crest, excuse me, to catch the wave, figure out
Yep.
how to ride it, take it into shore, and measure your success and then, get ready and prepared for the next one. I mean, that's just what and it's not even just about business, it's about life. Life throws a ton of changes at us all the time. So, I'm very aware of everything around me at all times. And that is a key part of managing change. Change is never just a project as it's written on paper. You have to look at the dynamics that are hitting you around the thing it is that you want to change, whether that's your sales target is going to be increasing by 20% next year, and you got to figure out how to achieve that, even though your market really hasn't evolved very much,
Mhm.
or you have underperformance in the sales team that you've got to turn around. You've got to look broader than the sort of facts directly in front of you. What are the other implications that you need to figure out and to manage? And that's all part of the chaos.
Yeah, and sometimes it is coming from within. You indicated somebody has upped my sales quota, or our company, the R&D team has come out with a new product, and we have these kind of changes that no matter where we sit in the organization, uh, they're going to have some repercussions on us. One, and it's a really old one, but you might remember it. It even has a name of how change was not really done with any long term thinking, and it's the Osborne computer, and it's now become the Osborne effect. And there was
Yeah.
this, you remember this kind of wasn't even a portable; it was a luggable computer, but they had made one, and it started to show some success, but they decided they were going to inaugurate a new next gen product, and it was going to render the initial product obsolete because it was so much better. Only problem was it was a year away, and the company didn't even make it that far. They went bankrupt before their new
Right.
product came along because everybody canceled their orders for the existing one. They said, "Oh, I'll just wait."
I'll just wait for the next one. Right.
So we have things that we need. We have to have a plan. It's bottom line here, and you have a blueprint that tries to take us through the formulation of that plan. And you point out that it's not done very often. As a matter of fact, most companies are like Osborne. Most companies don't successfully get over to that change. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah. So it's key. And so the 80/20 CS blueprint is a 5-gate method that takes you from ideation so the idea that you have that's either going to, uh, increase something that's already working well or fix something that's broken. Typically, I get pulled in when there's something that's broken and it needs to be fixed with some speed. But it works in either case. So it's amplifying a positive or rectifying and mitigating a negative. And so it takes you from ideation all the way through to when you've actually achieved the change that you're looking for, sustaining it. Because there's no point fixing something if everybody's going to fall back to their old ways of doing things 3 months from now. So it's about systemic change that is sustainable. So as I mentioned, the blueprint has 5 gates. The first gate, and I'll just use a little bit
Go
of
for it.
lay language, so that we're not spending too much time. People can read the book and get into the details of it. But the first gate is all about defining the goal, the outcome the macro outcome that you want to achieve. And typically that involves an ask of support from senior leadership to really get behind you to do something that's going to have a material impact at the end of the day. So that's the first gate, is like, what is that overarching outcome that you believe is going to be positive? And, it may be that you want to ask, the board or the C-suite to approve opening up a new market. So you've only been in North America and you want to go to the UK and Benelux, for example. That's a
Right.
pretty significant investment, but you've written a business case that tells you that if you do this, you're going to be able to grow the revenue by X in the next 3 years. That's as an example. The
Right. And
second,
I'll hold you just there for a
sure,
second
yeah,
before we get to the second step, because
okay,
I see this step having a distinctly personal uh, feature to it. I almost thought of like the protagonist in a story when I thought about the ask, because we're not yet into the entire organization. We're
that's right.
into what are you there to do. And, the rest of them, yes, we have to bring in the organization, but it starts with us, doesn't it?
Yeah, so it starts with the sponsor of the change. So when you say you, I think that's what you're referring to. Who's
Yeah.
sponsoring the change? 100%. So gates 1 and 2 are focused on senior leadership buy-in. So gate 1 being the ask, gate 2 being the goal. And those messages and the ask and the goal are delivered by someone who is saying, I'm going to be accountable for the success or failure of this thing that I want this organization to invest in and do. So you're 100% correct. The person who is delivering that ask and is saying, this is the goal I'm going to achieve. It's all about their credibility. And I actually talk about that in the book, that there's a formula and it's very simple. So it's, what is the goal that you are, um, um, what is a goal that you're setting, and the measurable outputs of that goal divided by or supported by the person who's bringing that to the table. So if on paper the thing that you want to do makes complete sense, you've written a sound business case, everything looks great, but the senior leadership has no confidence in the person who's tabling it, good luck. Like you're dead in the water. So I talk specifically about that. The person that's sponsoring this change and bringing it to the table is critical, because senior leadership is really going to actually make a decision more based on the who than they are on the what. And even if they believe in the plan, they might decide, yeah, that's a good idea, but I think actually somebody else needs to do it, or we're not really quite equipped to make that investment, because we are talking about dollars and cents. The example I gave you about expanding to a new region, that's a lot of significant investment for a company to do that kind of thing. And I do have a case study in the book related to that, where we really needed to grow our channel business significantly. We were on the path towards an acquisition,
Right.
and we needed to boost our channel revenue, and it wasn't going well. And so, I brought to our CEO a plan to turn the whole model on its head and actually bring more of the qualification accountability into the sales team. But I needed an investment in more headcount for inside channel sales, and we were able to make it an affordable business case by bringing in non-technical sellers. It could follow a really well-scripted, well-defined script, and get opportunities to that 30% floor before we even involved the sales team, and eliminated that pain of sales taking channel leads that were not qualified and wasting their time. But I brought the credibility that the CEO believed in based on my performance to date. And so we were able to do that, and we're able to grow the channel revenue by tenfold within 18 months. So it's a great question. Yeah, the who is really critical.
And just on that, do you think that the reason why there's some, scrutiny of the person who is giving the ask and then, helping formulate the goal? I mean, I think if I were to answer it, it would be, well, what we're attaching here is a cause to an effect, but we haven't yet seen, the causal relationship yet. So we're taking a leap of faith to say that if we do this, that will happen. And that's where your credibility is going to bridge it, right?
I don't think I don't. So the model that I've built, the 5 gates, has an underlying principle that you need to validate your plans and your work with data. So even
Mm-hmm.
at gate 1 and gate 2, where you're making an ask to do something that's going to change the way things are happening today, and you've set some goals, you absolutely do need to bring some validation to support that. So, and the reason senior leadership is going to have confidence in the person who's bringing it forward is they probably already have a track record in bringing some validation behind them when they've made an ask in the first place.
Right.
So, I know you work heavily with sales and marketing teams in your business, in your operation, and so
Yes.
obviously sales and marketing team, they're sitting on a ton of data. So that shouldn't be a big burden for people to be able to look in their historical CRM information or their marketing data and analysis that they have, and be able to provide that support that shows leadership that they've done their work. So this is all about work, and I can't stress this enough. 70% of change initiatives fail. And the primary reason why they fail is that the sponsors of, or the accountable sponsor of change has not estimated the effort correctly. They don't quite understand how much effort it's going to take. It always takes more work than you imagine. And secondly, they don't give enough weight to the people management side of change. So the book equally balances the on paper plan for change with the analysis of how it's going to impact the people that are connected to the change. And then how are you going to manage that and gain buy-in at all levels of the organization? It can really break down. So this is about work, successful change, to be in the 30% success club, which is the byline of my book.
Mm-hmm.
It's about work, and you cannot skip any of the steps. So another great question, Glenn, even it is about the credibility of the person, but I believe strongly that credible people that leadership support to lead change at any level of the organization are already substantiating their recommendations and their asks with data.
Yeah, and thorough data and fully looped feedback data. That people management that you talk about, you get quite explicit about the fact that you want those sponsors to be checking in with the people who will actually carry out the blueprint, and to ensure that they are on board, not that, lip service has been paid or they're just nodding their head, but then they're going to go back to doing it the way they were doing it before. And you outline 4 dimensions that you want us to check with the stakeholders on.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about those?
Absolutely. So my company name is called 80/20 CS, and it's important that I just define that fairly quickly because it is an integral part of the scoring mechanism in the framework. So 80/20 stands for the Pareto principle. People may know it as the 80/20 rule. And that is all about focus. So 80% of outcomes, whether they're positive or negative, you can link them in most cases to 20% of inputs. So in a sales team, typically the top 20% of your sellers are driving 80% of the revenue. That's just been an understanding. It's the rainmakers bring in a ton, and the rest of the team is supporting that sort of run rate. So that's what 80/20 stands for. The C in 80/20 CS stands for core, which is an acronym, which is all about confidence in the change plan. Are you so C for confidence, O for open. Are you open to change in order to achieve this outcome that you're looking for? R stands for resilience. Any change, as we talked about earlier, has chaos. And so you're going to hit bumps. Sometimes it's going to feel a little defeating. Are you resilient enough to keep going and bounce back? And E is for effort. Are you prepared to do the work hard over a long period of time to create sustainable change? And the S in 80/20 CS stands for strength. And strength is a measure of core. So at every gate, whether you're at gates 1 and 2 that are senior leadership, or if you're at gates 3 to 5, which is focused on middle management, you are going to score the buy-in at all levels. So let's just take that example, that use case of expanding to Europe, for example. So you've written the business case, the leadership is getting behind that. You're going to ask them to score on a percentage of 0 to 100%, how confident they are in the plan you submitted. Are they open to opening up business in Europe? Full disclosure that it's going to be tricky, it's going to be hard. Or do they believe that the organization is resilient enough to see it through to success? And is the organization, do they believe the organization is going to put in the effort to be successful in Europe? And any scores that are below 75% are red flagged as mitigate. So to your point, if you've got, let's say, 5 people in the C-suite, and the sales managers put this plan of expansion in, and all 5 of the members of the leadership team say, yep, I think we can get behind that. But when you actually go individually and you get their scores, two of them are below 75%, even though they put their hand up. So this is forcing you to look at why they are under 75%. Like, what are the things that they are lacking in confidence? Like, why might they not be open? Why do they not believe the organization is resilient enough to see this through? Or why don't they think the organization will do the hard work? So it's a framework that forces you to pay attention to the gray zones, right?
Mm-hmm.
To really scratch at the surface and mitigate it before you move to the next gate. So this is the problem in a lot of businesses that I've seen, and it's not uncommon. Like, I'm not reinventing the wheel here. I'm just giving structure to best practice when it comes to execution. You create a plan to expand, and then you skip all the steps in between, and you announce to market that you're going to go to Europe and Benelux, right? And then you
Right.
wonder why it's failed because you haven't done the work in between. And so the framework brings structure and accountability and process to change.
I'll agree with you on that process bit. I mean, asking point blank in a one-on-one, each of those four, confidence, openness, resilience, effort,
Yeah.
and getting people to quantify exactly how well they feel about each of those.
Yeah.
It is going to surface those unpleasant parts of the change that you must address. But I think it's also just on point with that sense that you gave of saying, look, this is a people issue. So
Correct.
like have those discussions with people. It might be uncomfortable, but get comfortable with the uncomfortableness.
You have to. And like, I'll just say another frank thing, right? This is about business. This isn't about a hobby in your backyard.
It's not a science fair project.
This is not a science, it's business. These organizations expect results. We get paid well to produce results. And the model is not just about the negative, it's also about the positive. So anything that has a score of 75 to 85 might need a little bit of tweak, but you can almost push those scores to the back burner for now. Anything above 85%, amplify. So when we go back to the 80-20 rule, you're going to mitigate anything under 75 and you're going to amplify anything over 85 because those are your 20% factors that are holding you back or will enable you to succeed.
And what's a tangible way that we can amplify
Correct.
Someone's responses?
Correct.
Could we like share it around the boardroom table? What do you suggest we try?
That's a really great question. So I think people have to read the room of the culture of their organization. So I talk in the book about, you can deploy the scoring model any way that makes sense for your organization. So maybe it could be a web poll. It could be around a boardroom table openly where there is a very healthy culture of transparency.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's not, then it could be one-on-one where you as a sponsor of the change can have very frank conversations in a trusted, safe environment, and then anonymize those results back to the management team for discussion to say, like, of the 5, we did have 2 people that were below 75% for these reasons, and we need to work through it as a team without alienating any individual. And
Right.
this also applies within smaller groups, right? Like, I'm focused on senior leadership because my mission is to help more companies succeed to the benefit of shareholders and employees and their families. That's my mission. But you could take the same model right down to a regional sales team in terms of executing on the number within a region, or within a marketing team that has a campaign for a new product. It is scalable up and down the organization. It's all about developing a new mental model for successful change around complex problem solving or capturing significant opportunity.
I'll vouch for that. It does give us a new way to think about it. We're not even done the blueprint yet. We've got the latter steps of it to go. But before we do that, Sue, we're going to take a really quick break. I'll step away to address one thing that's been missing from Funnel Reboot: the ability to access the text of any show. I'm glad to finally announce that the podcast is now fully searchable and copyable thanks to the transcript feature in YouTube. Yes, YouTube. Now, even though the last 165 shows are audio only, they are all on YouTube. Whether you're looking for a specific episode, a topic, or want to search the full text of a show for a specific part, go onto YouTube, head to Funnel Reboot's channel, and on the channel's masthead page, click the magnifying glass and search away. And while you're there, please consider subscribing to get future shows. There will be even more to say on transcripts in the coming days, but I'm pleased this capability is now available. Okay, now let's get back to the show. Okay, Sue, we have a good sense of how we're going to tackle this. We've kind of ideated, we've defined what our goal is. We think we know how we're going to get there, but we do want to move through the third, fourth, and fifth gates to actually bring it about. Can you tell us what those look like?
Absolutely. So gate number 3 is strategy. And if I break up the 5 gates, the first 2 gates are, again, senior leadership, which is about macro strategy. It's the big stuff that's going to really make a major change in the overall organization. Middle management, which is gates 3 to 5, is more it's execution strategy. So when we talk about gate 3 and strategy, it's really looking at, what will the change that I've got support from leadership to make? What will it change in the organization or in the market? Where will the change occur and when will it occur? So it's more the operational level and specificity of how you're going to affect change. Gate 4 is about setting your measurable objectives, and typically that's going to fall within the current fiscal year. If it's outside of the fiscal year, it's probably too far out for you to be planning unless you're doing this work, in Q3 or Q4 of your fiscal year. And then gate 5 is around how you communicate the plan. Not only, this isn't about a press release or an email that goes out. It's about nuanced communication of the plan at the appropriate levels. So the board and the C-suite are going to have a potentially a different message than middle management and front lines. And that will be a different message again than an externally communicated change that might go out to customers, the channel, distributors, vendors. If you are a public company, there's obviously could be regulatory implications and shareholder implications. So, we can go through that a bit more, but there are case studies in the book where I talk about all 3.
For sure.
Those, yeah.
So we'll work our way backwards
Sure.
into 3 and 4, but you were talking about the communication there, and you gave several examples that were turnaround related, and I think you make a point here that some might see as contentious. You said everybody doesn't need to know everything. So this point where you're saying what is for the purview of the board and what is for the purview of middle management or rank and file, you actually argue, you say that you need to see what the context of their job is. And if that context does not give an appropriate place for something as large as, well, we're turning our organization upside down to respond to, let's say, a change from perpetual licenses to recurring licenses, or a change from an all manual environment to an AI assisted environment.
Yeah.
That, like, you justify not giving everyone all the information.
100%. So there's 2 anchor case studies in the book. Overall, there's about 8 that I've lived or led. The 2 anchor case studies, one is where a company's been acquired by a much larger organization and they have an earn-out component that they have to achieve under a very short period of time. The second one is where a large software company that has acquired other software companies needs to convert their entire software catalog from perpetual licensing to recurring while maintaining extremely aggressive EBITDA targets. So let's talk about the second one.
Yes.
The reason that this organization that I worked for and I was leading the operations of the organization. So it was my job to convert the catalog, and while not eroding our performance on the EBITDA front. The reason they wanted to convert from perpetual to ARR is that and MRR is that recurring licensing is much more stable. Your churn is not as risky in downturns in the market, etc. And so at a board level, they wanted to solidify the value of the business by making this conversion happen. Because if they ever decided they wanted to divest one of these entities that they had acquired, the value of that entity would be more stable. It would retain its value over time. Frontline workers don't need to be distracted by the fact that potentially 3 to 5 years from now, one of the entities might get sold off. It's not relevant to their job today when they still need to attain quota against that product in this fiscal year. So why would you share that information? It's not relevant to their job. That's a perfect example of you've got a macro change that you are delivering, that you're accountable for, that you need to succeed at, that will have a benefit to shareholders long term. So you've got to do it. But what needs to be communicated down to the front lines is this is how it's going to impact or not your clients and your job. That's what needs to be communicated. Is that relevant information? So we engaged with the sales organization and the marketing. We actually had a cross section of the team working on this: finance, operations, IT, sales, and marketing. And we all came together to formulate the best plan. And there were some software titles that we didn't convert because it didn't make sense. We had to come up with strategies that would leave the channel whole so they wouldn't be losing money as a result of the conversion. And so, that buy-in and that communication, even though Gate 5 it sounds like you leave it till the end, the whole model of assessing buy-in and working through, the mitigation and the amplification steps, that is constant communications from Gate 1 to Gate 5. So by the time you get to Gate 5, you've worked through, where there's been a lack of buy-in and you've had challenges that you need to rectify. And so really Gate 5 is just rolling up everything you've learned from Gates 1 to 4 and then communicating it out to the audiences appropriately.
Yeah, I like that. And I think that the board level discussions, just knowing what human nature is like, if you have a healthy culture, those points are going to be surfaced well before you get down to speaking to rank and file or clients. For the reason that, and this is my own personal opinion, everybody operates on a what's in it for me premise.
100%.
So, right?
Yeah.
So that's the other side is I don't have to tell you everything because you really don't care about everything. You care about what matters to you.
That's right. That's right.
Right. But they will fill in that void if you do not make any attempt to see it from their angle. They will fill in that, and they will sometimes give themselves, wrong information in order to fit the narrative that they're playing in their head. So it's an exercise you must do. But really, you don't have to go as far as 100% transparency for everyone.
No, you shouldn't. It's not helpful in most cases. And, you have to communicate. You have to get feedback because the void that you leave if you don't is typically negative.
Yeah.
Don't over communicate. You communicate what's needed. But that speaks to the health of the management team, that the trickle down effect of, leadership trickles down. And so, senior management needs to practice transparency, openness, alignment, having conversations that can lead to a healthy culture of working together and doing the work and solving problems. And that will trickle down into the organization. And these things take time. Any meaningful change will take 6 to 18 months, depending on the size and scale and impact of the change. And then it will take another 6 months to stick. So this is about the long game. It's about hard work. And I think that people need to really just accept that. So, you said something earlier about the book. It's a frank book. It's not theoretical. Um, I don't have, an MBA in this and a degree in that and all kinds of certifications. The book is from the trenches. It's from 27 years of living change and living execution. And so the language and everything is how I've been successful in my career. And I think it's more accessible as a result of that.
I can't help but agree. The strategy and objectives, while we don't have time to go into all of it, a few quick things. You do say that it's helpful for a company to take on a methodology, project management of some sort.
Yeah.
And you also point out to them that they will hit tipping points and that they should build these into, or when they reach these moments, you call a tipping point something where you basically say, we don't know how to proceed from here. Looks impossible, but we have to find a way. And that the tipping point may, if they have a good methodology for flushing out what those possibilities are and then how they might run them over the next weeks or months, and they have people who understand their roles. You mentioned RACI as a way of assigning roles. Like there are a few ways that you can get your way through to achieving what the blueprint is calling for, even on top of all the work you've got to do in a regular week.
Yeah. So definitely, I am not recommending that you abandon all of your change management and process protocols for this. That's not it at all. This is a higher level framework for how you need to think about change, and so you can attach all of your, whether it's any methodology you would like, you can attach to this thinking framework to get things done. And yeah, tipping points are important. One of the examples that I give in the book is around how process and tools will get you 50% of the way to a successful change. But that alone is not enough. Grit is the other 50%. And it goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning, when chaos, right? And challenges that are going to come up. So you can have all the greatest tools in the world, but how you persevere through the roadblocks that are going to come have a massive impact on whether you're going to succeed or not.
For sure. You finish this. That's actually built into Gate 5, which is sustainability.
Correct.
Because you are pointing out, and for some people, they may have been able to get through life with a mentality of, problems come and they're just nasty obstacles. I've just got to somehow, wave them off or, bulldoze my way through. But you say instead, look, think about this as if you're grafting change onto the DNA of you and your company for doing this constantly.
Mm-hmm.
And another way that it's put in another part of the book is a growth mindset.
Yeah. I think, when we come down to sustainability, the framework forces you to look at change in the context of your business and your people, and then create your plan and your execution strategy based on those things. So that naturally means you're going to create stickiness, or as you said, grafting onto the people and the culture and the way things happen. So that's why it takes 6 months to 18 months for these types of things to actually stick. And I give in the book, there's a case study where I talk about how when I, on the turnaround example for earnout, where I had some major pushback from people that thought it was just administrative overhead and they didn't like it. It was slowing them down and escalating it to the VPs and the CEO. And I had only one instance where, the founder defended the person arguing that we shouldn't be doing it. And we had just a frank conversation that if we don't do this, we're not going to achieve our goals. And so there was complaining for about 3 months, and then it got quieter. And by the time we got to 6 months, the complaining had gone away because it was now the new norm. And that's why that tipping point, about 50% of the effort, is grit. If you back down when somebody complains about a change that you're implementing and you say, okay, fine, I'm sorry, let's not do it. How do you ever expect to get to the other side of that? So you've got to persevere through the complaints. People don't like change, as you were saying. It's human nature to resist change. And
Mm-hmm.
your job as a sponsor of change, when you know that this is the right thing to do, is to persevere through the change. And I think that, I've been through a lot in my professional and my personal life. And so that's developed, I guess, a deep sense of resiliency. And my goal with the framework is to help people develop those skills and this mental model without necessarily having to go through some of the challenges I've gone through.
And yes, it's great to save others when, they can benefit from your experience.
For sure.
You talk about that resistance, and there was another example of a person who, though a long tenured employee, so they sound like your example that escalated, they had enough credibility where it would rival what you were saying to it.
Yeah.
But it turned out that their objections, at least it seems that they were rooted in a personal motive, which was to get a bonus that year, and that in their own particular team or, whatever, they didn't have that mindset. They didn't believe it personally, and that they felt after a while that their own prospects were better working at another place. So they quit.
Yeah. So I don't want to, I think I give props to this individual, like the very, very credible person. And their, their decision not to stick around because they didn't see the potential of earning their bonus. That happens. But the reason they didn't see it is they were looking at historical data,
Mm-hmm.
and they made their decision based on historical trends continuing. But what we
And they basically, and we have to remember this, you can use data to support anything you want. They came with their own, I would call them counterfactuals, but
Yeah.
you have to have yours buttoned down as well.
Yeah, they weren't wrong. That's the thing. They weren't wrong. They weren't wrong looking at the historical trends. Where where they didn't have the successful change mindset is that the goal was to change the trends, the historical trends.
Right.
He had to find new ways so that the historical trends would not change. And that's the difference, right? And so core, strength, second letter in the acronym, openness. You have to be open to new ways of doing things in order to create the room for change to take hold and take place. And when I say do the work, it's not about just doing the paperwork. It takes energy to bring people along to see the path towards a successful outcome. So I think this is a really important point, and I actually I didn't talk about it in the book, so I'm really glad we're having this conversation. It's a ton of work to bring people on side, to educate them, to show them. And again, this is where validation data is critical, especially in a technology company where you have engineering mindsets where proof points are everything. That's part of your bringing people along to buy into your plan. It's a lot of work, and I'm not going to sugarcoat that. That's why only 30% of change efforts succeed. It's actually not complicated. It's relatively simple. It's just hard. And so you need to think about it pragmatically, and you need to do the work, and you need to treat people and the plan with equal weight through the whole process.
That's very well said. The buts are going to come. As a matter of fact, I think, based on reading your book, that you're trying to anticipate them, but when they're showing up, when someone is saying this totally goes against the pattern of what we've been doing,
right,
that your response should be something like, exactly.
Yeah,
and because and engage them at that point. I think the true enemy, you called it lack of buy-in,
yeah.
is just apathy. I mean, if we can't get them to complete that questionnaire or to tell us why they don't think it will work, actually, that's where we failed, right there.
Absolutely, but that raises from a leadership perspective, that just raises other questions that need to be answered, right? Why is this person so apathetic? Are they the right person in the role? Right? If they're not prepared to do what
Right.
business needs them to do, then all it does is beg a different question, right? And the reality is, you're going to lose people. There will be people. People are people, and if somebody fundamentally decides that they just do not support the plan, and you're never going to convince them, that's also just another data point for you. And so now, how are you going to pivot? Or is your decision going to be, I do need to fail fast? And in the case of, if you're a sales leader or an individual contributor in sales or in marketing, then maybe this is not the company for you to be with if you know there's no path out of this situation, right? Not every company will succeed at change, but at least the method that I'm bringing to the market in the book gives everybody a plan of attack, a framework to attack a shot at changing things, knowing that you can't save every situation. I certainly haven't been able to in my career.
There's that outcome. And then you even point out that in the successful outcome where you join that smaller minority that has succeeded, even then, your need to be there to fix things further may have run its course.
Right.
And that because your cost does not change in the times when you were absolutely needed for this change versus the time where no change is needed, it again, this is business. We may find ourselves out of a job, but that's okay.
Absolutely. I think in my early years of having experienced that, not realizing that's why my time was over and I needed to move on, it was definitely maybe a little bit more emotionally hard. It's not anymore. That's what I do.
Right.
And I'm
Right.
proud of it. And so, yeah, I think people just need to be very honest with themselves about what their purpose is. There are a lot of jobs out there that you can just happily go about doing your job every day and have some sense of security, making your numbers, and don't disrupt the boat. I personally really enjoy helping organizations fix problems, and I know that has a time limit on it. And so, writing the book is my investment in spreading the word more. I'm focusing on North America as an initial push, to help as many companies as I can and be completely satisfied with the work that I'm doing, which is, solving complex problems, helping people's confidence increase in doing it themselves, and just getting the message out there that it is possible to succeed.
For sure. If people want to get their hands on the book, where can they go?
Amazon. So Amazon, you can find the hardcover, paperback, and Kindle, and Audible. We are hoping to get it up. It's already recorded, but we're doing editing and last minute pushes. It'll be available on Audible in the next few weeks.
Great. Well,
and also, I would love for people to visit 8020cs.com. That's numerical, 8020cs.com, where you can find out more about me, the book, but also my engagement model. So everything from trusted advisor. I help management teams align. So if they've got a challenge, just a third-party facilitation model. Also mentorship to up-and-coming individuals that would really like some independent support, and as well speaking engagements around the topic of change.
And if people want that, I'm sure they can reach out to you directly on places like LinkedIn.
Absolutely, LinkedIn, and there's forms on my website where you can submit a request as well. So either way, I'm very easy to get a hold of.
Fantastic. We'll have all those in the show notes. Sue, thank you so much for coming on and sharing.
Thank you, Glenn. It was a great conversation. I appreciate the invitation. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening. Follow the show on Twitter @Funnel Reboot. If you like what you have heard today, please consider leaving a review wherever you get your podcasts.